Hello everybody, I'm Morten, the Danish translator on the Fighting Fantasy series. Today I'm going to talk about the new Danish version, the 400 section Starship Traveller that came out in April 2026. Let's get into it. So, the original Starship Traveller was of course written by Steve Jackson back in 1983, and it consisted of 343 sections, out of which 3 were actually rules. So 340 sections, which makes it the shortest fighting fantasy book in the entire series. The book came out in the late summer of '83, and just 1 month later came The Shamutansi Hills by Steve Jackson as well. So he's probably been writing both of these at the same time. The first Danish version was published in 1985 and is often confused with this one, Rebel Planet, because these were the only 2 sci-fi titles in the series ever published in Danish. Now the thing is, this has an error in it. In the book there is a song, I believe it's a song or a chant, and it consists of 3 numbers. The translator forgot one of these 3 numbers. So it's actually just 2 numbers, and the only way to find the proper section is to go through all of them. Is this it? This may seem irrelevant to Starship Traveller, but the thing is, since this one had a bad reputation and was known as the space book, this other space book also got a bad reputation. Completely undeserved, but that's culture. My own quest to bring Starship Traveller to life in Danish started when I asked the Danish publisher if we could publish some of the sci-fi titles. The publisher told me sales on sci-fi isn't as good as on fantasy. We don't really want to do that. And then I came to the conclusion, maybe we could do it as a crowdfund campaign, because that would neutralize the financial risk of doing the project. So I asked, and they said yes. And to begin with, we actually started on Freeway Fighter by Ian Livingstone. But after thinking about it for a while, and because of some different planning and so on, we decided that we wanted to do Starship Traveller instead. Knowing that it's only 340 playable sections, how about if I ask Steve Jackson if I can write 60 new sections? And some of you may think, that's audacious, just asking if you can write 60 more sections. But actually, I've already collaborated with both Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson on a number of Danish translations. This one has a unique Danish ending. This one and this one are a mini-series. This one ends and leads directly into this one, and you transfer your character from the first to the second, keep your equipment, keep your stats and some information. So the idea of me adding 60 more sections to Starship Traveller isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. I wrote 60 sections, sent them off to the UK, and after a bit of back and forth, they were approved by Steve Jackson. So that's how the cookie crumbles. The next thing, of course, was getting the illustrations. Peter Andrew Jones is a true gentleman and true to his word, and a very entertaining and cool guy. This was a great collaboration. Not only did we get the inner illustrations, but Peter also contributed a bonus illustration, a pencil drawing that he did. Looks like this. I'm so grateful for this cool collaboration. Now, what about these 60 new sections? You might ask, what do they consist of? Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I can tell you this. They consist of 8 chunks of content, to use a modern expression. The content is divided into 2 parts. One is the stuff that expands on Steve Jackson's existing story, which is, for instance, you beam down to a planet and there's 2 options, and in this new version there's 3 options. And then there's completely new stuff that I dreamed up from the great beyond. And that's new planets, new races, new situations, new items, and so on. That's actually also a new ending, completely new ending for the story. As part of this new version of Starship Traveller, we added in a few bits. Here's the adventure sheet, and as you can see, every character on board has room for their names, because I found out a lot of people name their crew. Also, if you're dealing with an officer, 3 of the officers have -3 to combat rolls. And we actually added in here in the skills section -3 to combat to remind the player, because there's so many rules and specificities of this book that we thought we'd help them out. Of course, you also have the traveler, your equipment, your notes, and then you have this bit down here, which is other crew members. Did you know that in the original Starship Traveller, Steve actually has a bit where you can pick up another crew member, but there's not room for it in the original adventure sheet. You have to type it under notes or on a sheet of paper next to the book. So we actually added in this bit because it does two things. First of all, there's a place for the character if you meet that character. Second of all, if you don't find the character, but you look at the adventure sheet, you kind of get an inkling that maybe there's more to the story. If you didn't find this character, maybe you could go through it again, perhaps find this person, right? So it's kind of a teaser. Also, here's the combat sheets. It has space combat, melee combat, and ray gun combat. And some of you may think, well, in ray gun combat, there's death ray and then there's stun ray. You don't use stamina. Well, in the new parts, you do. Also, one more thing I'd like to add. I put in an appendix in the new version. The appendix consists of a list of the characters and the planets and the races in the book that are named after people that Steve Jackson knew back in 1983 when he wrote the book. At that time, Games Workshop consisted of 5 shops, and they had White Dwarf, and they had their main facility, their storage place, and the offices, and they had a lot of people working for them. And Steve decided to name a lot of the creatures and so on in the book after these people. And some of you Brits, people in the UK, you probably know this, and some of you actually met these people and know they're in the book. But I'll tell you what, when this book came out back in 1985 in Danish, not a soul over here knew who Brancel, for instance, was named after. Even if they knew, oh, it's named after Brian Ansell, 99.9999 of the people would still go, so who's he? And in order to remedy the situation in this new version, I decided to add in a list of who these people were named after. I couldn't find every single person. Ian Livingstone helped me out a bit on the list. Thank you so much. They're really good. For instance, it says Fioral, named after, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Albi Fiore. Fiore, maybe. One of Games Workshop's creative main arteries. Developed board games, role-playing games, was a writer on White Dwarf, and much more. So now the Danes have a chance of finding out who these people were. And the funny thing is, I also translated the new Danish version of Diceman here. And this one has a lot of information about the characters who are actually named in Starship Traveller. So I thought, since I just recently translated this, came out a year ago, something like that, this one talks about the period in which this one was written. I'm really grateful to all the people who backed this. It also had some UK backers, some US backers, people from, there's one person from Canada, a lot of Danes, of course. And I will bring some copies of this one to Fighting Fantasy Fest 6, which is, I believe, the 5th of September 2026. Got some Danes visiting the UK, London once again, to bring joy in the daytime and terror in nighttime, as the Vikings did, I guess. We gotta live up to our reputation, right? Can't have all peace and quiet. I don't know why I said that. And I'll bring some other stuff, some goodies, I guess. So I hope to see you there, and if you got any questions or anything, feel free to ask, feel free to, send me an email or type in something in the